Hi, could you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Lou Panizzon, and native Carpinterian, born in 1941. Lived here all my life, now 73. So I've seen Carpinteria from the early days till what we have going on around us today. And it's interesting to see how it has evolved. And the one thing I can say, there's more people than when I was here in my youth.
Well, tell me, I know warrior spirit and warrior football and maybe other sports too are a big deal in town. Tell me what is it all about and why you think it's a big deal?
Well, I think football was introduced by a principal at the high school named Hawley, Hawley, in 1928. So that was the first team, and they had success right off the start. And so it was one of those things that brought the community together. I think there were several things that happened to develop that spirit. One was that they started to win a lot, so that always helps. And in 1950, the community came together through the American Legion and the Foreign Legion post to renovate Memorial Field, where the junior high is now. And that was a big unifier for the community because it brought people together, and they put lights up and dedicated it to those young men who lost their lives in the war. So it was Carpinteria Memorial Field. So that was part of that warrior spirit, and they won. We won 9 Tri-Valley League titles in a row from 1947 on, and then we were, brothers of and brothers played, and then sons of fathers played, and so there was a continuity that made it a real special sport for kids in town. And we didn't have youth football. We didn't have a lot of the youth programs, so kids looked forward to coming to the high school to play. And so, most of the kids in school would play. And so that was definitely part of it. But I think the winning really helped. And we won our first CIF championship in 1975, and that was a big deal in town. It was an unbelievable crowd at Memorial Field, and they ran on the field after the game and tore down the goalposts and drug the goalposts down the street into the palms, and it was quite the evening. It was like the celebrations you see after the big wins in World Series or basketball championships. So that was a big deal, but it was a big deal before '75.
Well, let me get back up there. So in that CIF championship game, who was playing, what teams, and who were some of the star players?
Okay, 1975, the game was against LA Lutheran, which is, I don't know if they're no longer around, but the Lutheran schools have evolved into other schools in LA. But we beat them 9-6 at Memorial Field. And the big star with that game was a kid by the name of Doug Pauly. He was a junior. He caught the winning touchdown. And we had lost our quarterback, Keith Bell, in the semifinal game. So Steve Perez was the quarterback. The running back was Jay Canton. And the most valuable player of the team was Walter Riquejo, who kicked a field goal in that game, which helped us win the game. And Walter had kicked 11 field goals, which was, at the time, was a CIF record. And there were some, other players. There was a Pancho Gonzalez at tackle, a kid by the name of Eccles at center, Izquierdo at tackle. Wally Burquez was on that team, and Wally's now a fireman here in town. John Luera. I'm going to leave somebody out. They're going to be upset with me.
Who was coaching?
Coaches, I was the head coach. Greg Lee was my assistant, and Jim Bashor was an assistant. Yeah, so it was my first year too as the head football coach. So it was a lot of things going on to make it a unique situation. But we had a lot of returning players, and we came together and played really well. Defense was very strong. Tony Jimenez was a good linebacker and did really well. We had a kid by the name of Mike Chafee, who's no longer with us. Was a safety. We had some really talented kids that came together and had been together for a long time. They played boys club football together, and so it was a unique group of kids. And it's going to be the 40th anniversary next year, I think. So that was the big game in 1975.
And can you tell me a little bit more about that game, like what happened or what some of the key plays were?
Well, geez, I have to think about that now. I wasn't prepared to get into it. The big key game was a pass play. The winning touchdown was a pass play from Steve Perez to Doug Pauly late in the game. But one of the biggest things in that game was L.A. Lutheran ran the triple option at the time, and they broke a big play towards the end of the game. And two things that stand out from that play. One was that Doug Pauly, who was playing defensive end, chased that player all the way to the goal line and tackled him, but he had scored to put them ahead. And but a major thing that happened was that about the 50-yard line, one of our defensive back, Wally Burquez, was clipped. And so we saw the yellow flag, but you never know what the flag and what the call is going to be. And so it was a penalty. Someone from L.A. Lutheran had clipped Wally, so the play was nullified, and it was brought back in a 15-yard penalty. And so two things from that play stand out. One, Doug Pauly was a junior that year, and the next year he was being recruited by one of the schools was Ohio State. And Woody Hayes actually came to Carpinteria to talk to Doug. But he came to Carpinteria based on that film because he saw Doug Pauly's hustle and never giving up attitude chasing that fullback from L.A. Lutheran all the way to the goal line. It was like a 50, 60-yard run. And the other thing that stands out about the play is Wally Burquez got clipped, and Wally now is went into football officiating and is one of the top officials in the area, and has done a remarkable job refereeing. And so it's kind of unique from that particular game that those two things stand out in my mind.
So it sounds like an exciting game. How did the crowd react at the end of the game?
Well, they rushed the field, just like you see on TV, and they tore down the goalposts. We had wooden goalposts in those days. They weren't metal, and people took them, parts of it. They broke it up, and they took it, some of it, down the street. A large part of it was taken down 8th Street, the Linden, into the Palms. And a gentleman who worked for the school district, Lester Kohler, who lived right on Palm, they took it down to his house, a good section of it, and he got his saw out, and he cut it up a bunch of pieces so people were able to take a souvenir of the goalposts. In fact, I have a piece of the goalpost in my garage too. So it was quite the deal. I mean, it was fun to see and it wasn't a malicious crowd. It was a fun crowd that tore down the goalposts, and everybody was cooperative, and no one was hurt. And it was just one of those unique things that made it a memorable night.
So what do you have there, Lou?
I have a picture of Woody Hayes and myself at Carpinteria High School. I think we were in Dave Goodfield's office, the athletic director at the time. And this was 1976, the year when Doug Pauly was a senior. So this.
I'm sorry, Lou. Lou, tell me again, what do you have there?
I have a picture of Woody Hayes, the head football coach at the time at Ohio State University, and myself. I think we're in Dave Goodfield, the athletic director's office at Carpinteria High School. And Woody came to Carpinteria to recruit Doug Pauly, who was, this was 1976, probably it was in the spring of 77 when he came to recruit Doug, and that was, Doug was one of the stars of that 75 championship team. And So
You can put that down.
okay. Anyway, that was a big deal to have Woody Hayes come, and I remember Jackie Olmsted, who was a librarian at the time, who was from Michigan, and she had a good time teasing Woody Hayes, and Woody Hayes says, "We don't say Michigan, we say that school up north." I remember that. That was pretty funny.
That's funny. Any other Warrior highlights you'd like to tell me about?
Well, I think that the fact that during this time of from 1965, when the city was incorporated, Carpinteria won a Tri-Valley League championship in '65, and Mike Donnelly was the quarterback of that team, and he later became a policeman for the city of Carpinteria and retired from Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office. And he was an all-CIF player of that on that team. And during the years, when you talk about the history of Carpinteria football, we've been in 10 CIF championship games, which I think says a lot about the program over the years. And winning 6 of those titles, I was able to, as a head coach, win 4, and Ben Halleck won 1, and Coley Candell won 1. And so we're proud of the fact that we were in that many championship games over the time span of from last at least from '75 on. So that was the highlight, I think, of the success of the program. And of course, we've had some really good football players come through there, but none of them with the kind of status that Chris Kokong achieved. Chris, of course, was an all-CIF player and played at. Got a full ride scholarship to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, where he was All-American, and then played professional football for Philadelphia Eagles and Cleveland Browns. And so we're proud of that as a homegrown kid that developed his skills on our playing fields and worked out in our weight room and studied in our classrooms and was not only a good football player but a good student. So we're proud of Chris and for his achievements, and kind of put our name on the map a little bit too.
Well, what type of guy is he, and what type of player was he?
Well, Chris was he's a gentle giant, if you will. He's the nicest young man. He and Mandy just had a baby a couple of years ago, and he is unique in the sense that he's quiet to be around, but if you watch him at the gym, he works, he's strong as can be, he works hard, but he's very pleasant, very courteous, very nice, and we'll talk to you and be respectful and appreciate who you are, and he appreciates our community, and he still hangs out with Gordy, his high school teammate, and they fish together down at Sandingland Point, and so he's just a good guy. I think that's probably a great definition of who he is. He's a good guy.
Do you think part of the reason for the success of Warrior football is us being a small town?
I think that's part of it. I think it's those days are maybe long gone, because for public schools to develop programs anymore, it's tough. But that was definitely the deal. All the small towns had their football teams, and the community supported them. And I think that our unique situation was that it was the thing to do in town, and the parents supported it. And when the team played downtown, it was a focus of the downtown action. It was kind of like putting the Rods and Roses and the Avocado Festival all together, and you had Warrior football at Memorial Field on Friday night. I think it's a little different at the stadium, Carpinteria Valley Memorial Stadium, because it's not downtown, but it draws the fans, and the kids definitely still enjoy the game, and the parents support it, and the booster club's very active, and so I think those things are unique, but it's tough anymore because we have more sports for kids to participate in. Some parents are concerned about football a little bit, but I think that the football coaches do a great job. They teach all the right things. They're cautious. We have a trainer, and thanks to the school board for supporting that. I think it's important to know that we have a lot of youngsters participating in athletics, and it's a big part of their development as young people. And that we need to make sure that the coaches are doing their things the right way, and we support the coaches in all the ways we can. And one of them is to provide the kind of medical support that they need, because if a youngster gets hurt, it's important that we have qualified people to deal with it. So I'm real proud of everybody's concern for the welfare of the kids and their ability to teach kids to do the right things.
Do you have any thoughts of what other sports are popular here in town or have a history? Or?
Well, I think there's no doubt, well, you know, I have to brag about our 1974 baseball team when we won the first CIF championship on the arm of John Moreno. That was a big deal. But I think right now, boys soccer is definitely turned out some great athletes and gotten to the CIF finals a couple of times and have won some. So, yeah, I think soccer probably right now is a big thing in our community. But I think all sports have been. Van Latham has done a tremendous job with the track and field program and won a couple of CIF championships there. The baseball team continues to be successful. Swimming and water polo is making an impact now, both boys and girls. So I think the kids have a great opportunity in Carpinteria to participate not only in sports, but they can play a sport and then be involved in the Muses program, which is the drama program, or the ag program, which is very, very successful. So it's unique in the sense that you're a small school and you are able to do many things, not only play more than one sport, but be involved in other extracurricular activities and still get a good academic education that allows our students to get into the Ivy Leagues, you know, get into Harvard, get into UC Berkeley, UCLA, and so that's unique about a small community that's supported by the parents.
You've been with the school district for a while. Can you think of any highlights with the schools over the last 50 years?
Well, I think there's two things that always make me proud of Carpinteria is that they do support the schools. Back in 1930, they passed a bond, and there's, like when you pass a bond, you're always going to have people that are pro and con. Do we really need to spend that kind of money? Is a building going to be too big? Are you doing the right thing with the taxpayers' money? But in 1930, they passed a bond and built the current junior high school facility. And then, I don't know what year it was, around the 1990s, we passed Measure A, which allowed us to do some things throughout the district, remodel some schools, update the computer labs in both the middle school and the high school, develop some fields for physical education and athletics. We did a lot of good things with that Measure A money. And then just last year, of course, we passed Measure U, which is going to allow the school district to, and you know, $90 million. So it was a big bond, and the taxpayers again and the voters supported that bond, and this district now will be able to do some good things, which will pay off for our kids in the long run. And we need to invest in our infrastructure for schools, because if we don't, we're going to be in trouble down the road. So I'm really proud of our community for doing that and continue to support our schools. I think we have a very active parent support group. We have a boosters club, both for the ag program and the athletic program. We have a lot of folks get involved in our schools and do a good job. So it's really important for parents to stay involved with their kids in schools, because we know that those kids that stay in extracurricular activities and have parent involvement are the kids that succeed in school. It's not a real tough formula to follow, and those kids that take their education seriously and are personally responsible and have a work ethic and understand that education is going to make a difference in their lives are being successful, and I think that's a great thing.
Is one of the recent things the training kitchen that was built?
Yeah, I think that was a big community fundraiser that converted the old home ec room, you know, if you will, which is kind of was the curriculum of the 50s and 60s, we now have a modern kitchen that teaches really career opportunities for our kids that can go through that program, then matriculate to Santa Barbara City College's program that allows them to get into the hotel industries or lots of different job opportunities in our community because of that facility.
Are there other important or outstanding programs like the Ag program?
Well, I think the Ag program is done unbelievable. John has done an unbelievable job of getting kids involved, and you know that takes a lot of time. They spend a lot of time during the summer, and then he's on call all the time for weekends because the animals don't know, you know, that it's Saturday and Sunday if there's a problem. And so, yeah, it's an amazing thing because he gets kids involved, and they are outstanding throughout the county. Tri-counties in their competitions. They have a lot of different kind of competitions, and they've been successful at the national level as well as at state level. So yeah, it's an outstanding program that gets a lot of kids involved, and that's a key thing.
And perhaps it's important in our community because we have a lot of ag.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think it's tough to become a rancher because of the price of property, but it gets kids involved in understanding about agriculture, and it gets them interested enough to go to Cal Poly to learn what's out there and develop into a career for them. So yeah.
Let's switch to the Carpinteria pool. Were you around for when that was? Tell me the story.
Well, I'm vaguely going to remember. The pool was always controversial in the sense that we had an area at the high school built in the back of the gym, where was an area that was designed to put a pool in there. But the school district never felt that they could afford a pool. I mean, a swimming pool is very expensive for maintenance, and though a beachside community, you'd think we'd have a pool, but we didn't. And so there was a group of folks that got behind it, and it's a unique Carpinteria situation. You have a group of people who are passionate about something, and they worked with the district and with the city, and they did a fundraiser, and the district made a deal for the property on the corner there of Maple and Carp Avenue. And then I know Jack O'Connell, I think he was I'm not sure he was state senator at the time, but he helped us with the financing. So between all those folks, but really it was a core of Carpinterians who wanted that swimming pool, and they wanted it there, and that's what it took. And they were the ones that spearheaded it, and I know Doc Carty did a lot of work after he retired around there. And so it's turned out to be a great facility. My wife has used it a great deal, and I know that it's used early in the morning until late at night. So it's been a great facility for everyone.
What did Doc Carty do for the schools?
Well, Doc Carty was a superintendent for 26 years, and he just did a lot of things. You know, I mean, he definitely unified the district. When he first came, there was two separate districts. There was an elementary district and a high school district, and so he brought the districts together, and they were unified, so they had one school board.
Do you know about when that happened?
I think it was about 1960, just when he arrived. He came in 1960, so it was in the first couple of years there. And then, of course, he got Carpinteria High School built up there on Foothill. And they did some things at Catalino School. The Early Childhood Center was a big thing for Bob Keating, and Jimmy Campos were really important with that development. He just did, and he was a good person to have in the community. He lived here. He was involved with his church and his family here, and he worked, you know, we're having the Russell Cup coming up, and he always worked the Russell Cup finish line. He was always involved with the school's big events, and he was an educator's dream as far as I was concerned, because he loved kids, number one, and he supported you, number two.
Nice. When was the high school built, and what was the story behind that?
Carpinteria High School at Foothill Road.
Yeah.
I think it was started to be built in 1967, probably. It was first used as a middle or a junior high school, and but the first class at Carpinteria High School, my guess was 1968, but I'm not positive of that.
Okay, so late 60s.
Yeah, late 60s.
And what was the story behind the need for it? Or?
Yeah, there was just the school district was growing. We needed more space, and the middle school site was too small for the number of kids that were in high school, and so yeah, it was a space situation, and the need was there, and we had a lot of kids. At one time, Carpinteria High School was almost 1,000 kids. And now I don't know where they are. They're probably around close to 650, 700. So, yeah. And in order to provide a good high school curriculum, you need a lot of classrooms and the other kinds of things that developed when that school was being built. We had a wood shop and a ceramics room, home ec room, ag shop. So it was a need that people saw, the school board saw the need, and they went forward and put a facility there that would meet those needs.
Was it hard to come up with the money for the land and the building?
You know, I can't recall that. I was away to college most of that time in the Army, so I think it was probably doable, and obviously it was because they got it done. So I think I know they bought the property from John and Jane Bianchin, which was it was a part of the Franklin Ranch, and so. But I imagine that any time you're going to use public money to buy things to build a school, it's not easy. So it took a lot of work and a convincing of the community that it was a need. And again, the community supported it.
Are you aware of a time capsule below the Warrior Head out in front of the high school?
I am.
Tell me about that. What's the story?
I'm going to have to get my wife to help me with this.
What?
I'll pause. So, are you aware of the time capsule?
Yeah, I think I am. I vaguely remember Gary Elkins, the art teacher, helped build that, and John Woolbrandt was very involved. So John Woolbrandt would be, he definitely had input and helped design and the Indian head and the monument, and so I think he knows about the capsule and where it's buried and what that's all about.
Okay. Now, speaking of Warrior Head and so forth, one issue that was kind of a difficult issue was the Warrior mascot issue. Can you tell me about what that was about and the pros and cons?
Well, you know, Indian mascots are controversial throughout the United States. It's not unique to Carpinteria, and here in Carpinteria, the Carpinteria Warriors mascot, if you will, and logos and Indian imagery have been around since 1920s. And the school board, because of a student's complaint, made a decision to get rid of the Carpinteria Warrior mascot and Indian imagery, and they did it in 2 board meetings. So it raised a lot of controversy because it was a sudden decision that was not really talked about within the community the way probably it should have been, and consequently it created quite the uproar, and every small town in America has had the same issue and the same kind of reaction. So I think that we resolved it fairly well. It's an issue that's still seen throughout California and throughout the United States, but it's also kind of interesting to see that we still have the Florida Seminoles, the Florida State Seminoles, who really use the imagery, but they say the Florida Seminoles support that, and so consequently they're allowed to keep it. So it's one of those issues that won't go away, but I'm glad that we have resolved it, and that people seem to be okay where we are right now.
How was it resolved, and what did the student want changed?
Well, the school board actually had voted to get rid of it, and then
Get rid of what?
the imagery. So change the name and get rid of all the imagery part that had any connection to the American Indians. And through different meetings and re-election of school board members, things were compromised, and the issue was settled. That's about the best answer I can give you. It was settled.
Okay. Are there laws about that? Is it just kind of up to each community, or do you know?
There's no laws. Yeah, no. It's been, laws have been proposed at the California legislature, but they have never passed. The best I can.
So Lou, as regards the warrior mascot, I know a lot of Carpinterians felt strongly about keeping it the way it was, and why would you say that was?
Well, I think tradition, and they saw it as a positive. They didn't see it as a negative, and that, I think that brings it as close to resolution that I can bring it to. There was, for the kids that went through the program, for the kids involved, for the parents involved, it was a positive. It wasn't a negative. That's all. That's the best thing I can say about it.
Okay. So tell me about your experience with the Bluffs issues.
Well, I think the Bluffs, thanks to Dorothy Campbell and her group of folks that put the organization together to purchase that property, it was the best thing that ever happened to Carpinteria, because we have a beautiful open space that my wife and I use all the time, and people in this community are so fortunate to be able to walk up there, and the people who developed Viola Field allow kids to have great soccer and softball facilities. It's just a beautiful place to enjoy the outdoors and what's all positive and good about Carpinteria.
Very nice. Lou, what are your thoughts about the future for Carpinteria?
Well, you know, we're a unique community in the sense of we're between the ocean and the mountains, and we need to respect both. And we have now opened up the Franklin Trail. It allows a lot of our community members and outsiders too, when I say outsiders, people who don't live in Carpinteria, use that trail for exercise and all sorts of positive reasons. And I just hope they respect that, and respect the folks that helped get it open, and respect it even more when they continue up further with the trail. And then the same with our ocean and our beaches. I hope that they realize what a unique beach area that we have, what a beautiful area it is, and respect and use it the right way. That's what I would like to see in our community, and I understand that we're limited in space, not a whole lot more that we can do, and that let's try to keep it as pristine as we can by doing what's right with the land.
Nice. I saw in the paper recently there's concern about people starting fires up on the Franklin Trail.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about that?
No.
Yeah, okay. I'll stand by. Are there any landmarks in town that are particularly meaningful to you?
Well, I think the fact that, I grew up in the community, and the Carpinteria Memorial Field was a big thing to me, and because the field was dedicated to those young men who had died in the war from 1941 on. And when we opened up and established Carpinteria Valley Memorial Field, we put up the first time in our community out in the public the names of those men who died from 1941 to the young man who died in Iraq. And so, yeah, that's a really special place to me when you go up to Carpinteria Valley Memorial Stadium and see that plaque and read those names. I think it's really important for our community people to understand about our freedoms and who has lost their life in support of those freedoms, and that we just don't remember them on Veterans Day or Memorial Day, but remember them every day. And so that's what I like about that, is that kids, and I go up to the stadium for different events, and it's interesting to watch the folks stop and read the names. So I think that's my most meaningful memorial monument for me. I do enjoy going to the cemetery. Susie and I go to the cemetery and put flowers on our parents' graves, and I like walking around and seeing the different names of military personnel who have died or were in the military, and they have the headstones that designate that they were in World War II or whatever it was.
I know you were quite instrumental in getting the football stadium built. What is the official name?
The official name is Carpinteria Valley Memorial Stadium. Yeah.
And thanks for your work with that and
Thank you.
Everything else. And also, you served in the military. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Oh, I went into the Army right out of college and went through a program called College Option OCS, Officer Candidate School. So I went to basic training in New Jersey at Fort, geez, all of a sudden I can't remember the name of the fort.
In New Jersey?
In New Jersey, I'll come back to it in a minute. But then, Fort Dix, thank you, Fort Dix. I'll tell you, my memory. And then I went through OCS, or Officer Candidate Training, at Fort Benning, Georgia. And then I served for a year at Fort Ord for an outfit called CDAC, which was an experimental battalion, and we tested new weapons, and I did a lot of work at Fort Hunter Liggett. And then I ended up going to Vietnam and was wounded and came home and got a job, thank goodness to Doc Carty for hiring me at Carpinteria High School, and spent 33 years at Carpinteria High School.
How did you get wounded?
We were in a battalion minus operation in the Michelin rubber plantation near Loc Ninh, which was close to the Cambodian border, and we walked into an ambush. And then we did our little fire maneuver thing, and then I had to turn the fire mission over to the captain, and his forward observer brought the artillery in, and he brought it in too close, and so I was hit by friendly fire.
How did Carpinterians react to the Vietnam War and to you when you returned? I know it's kind of a controversial war.
Yeah, I had nothing but positives. The first day I came home from the hospital, I was walking down the street, and I can remember not Mike Woolridge, but Mr. Woolridge, the principal at Carpinteria High, Bob Woolridge, he was the principal at Carpinteria High School, maybe the principal at Catalino School at the time, stopped his car right in the middle of the street and jumped out and ran over and grabbed me and gave me a big hug and thanked me and shook my hand. And then I walked another 20 feet down the street, and John Moyer saw me. Hey, get in here, I'm going to buy you a cup of coffee. So I had nothing but positive from the folks. When I was wounded, I got a ton of letters from Carpinterians when in the hospital. I was asked to speak at different Veterans Day events. I've spoken at Memorial Day ceremonies at the cemetery several times. I did veterans talks at the different schools. I did veterans talks at the Lions Club and different organizations. So it's always been a positive with me. I've never had any problems, and some of the myths dealing with Vietnam and the veterans treatment are myths. You know, we have to understand that young men were coming home and women were coming home from Vietnam every day. We didn't have a victory in Japan or a victory in Europe day. The war lasted 10 years. At the time, it was the longest war we've ever been involved in. And so young men like me were coming home and going back to doing what they were doing in their communities throughout the United States. And I don't feel I was unique. I think people were welcome back. But a lot of the people coming back to the big communities, and there is a feeling among Vietnam veterans that they were never welcome home, and so they make a big deal out of that. And they just had a ceremony just not a couple of weeks ago. But I think generally speaking, the Vietnam veterans that I know in Carpinteria, they came back and got going with their jobs and their careers and their families, and it wasn't a big deal.
Maybe one of the advantages of a small town is we recognize people, we know the faces, whereas in bigger towns it's anonymous, you don't know
Yeah.
the story behind the person.
I'm sure that's exactly right, yeah. There's several gentlemen here in town that I've talked to who are involved in with the Vietnam Veterans Organization, and that's basically their feeling. But, you know, I know, like my brother served in Vietnam, and he came home and got a job and went on with it. So, and you know, I think that most people have a lot of misconceptions about those 10 years in Vietnam, and they need to do a little history reading and research, and don't judge Vietnam on movies from Hollywood.
I know there used to be a Loyalty Day parade. Do you recall, here in town, do you recall that?
Yeah, vaguely. In fact, I remember either I walked in it because I was a veteran. It seemed to me Loyalty Day was like around July 4th, but I don't quote me on that. But yeah, it was one of those little parades that we have, you know. It lasts a couple of blocks and everybody's cheering and waving flags. It's a good feeling. It was always fun. Yeah.
I think it occurred around May Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could have been. I remember Ernie Woolbrand had this old Army Jeep. Ernie was one of our city councilmen, served as a mayor, John Woolbrand's dad. He had an old Jeep, and he'd always dress it all up with flags and different things, and it was always, you know, kind of cool. Yeah.
Were you involved in the incorporation issues?
No,
Okay.
I was not. I did do student teaching for Alan Coates, who was very heavily involved and became our first, I don't know if he was the first mayor or not, I think he was, and on the first city council, and he was a teacher, history teacher at Carpinteria High School at the time.
What was he like?
Alan was he was a veteran. He served in Korea with the Santa Barbara National Guard, I can't remember the unit, and he had a Purple Heart, and he was into city government and made a career of it after he got out of teaching. He ended up being our city manager. So he was a good guy. Yeah, he was a loyal Carpinterian, adopted Carpinterian. Yeah, he loved our community.
Can you tell any other stories about Ernie Woolbrand?
Well, I got too many stories about Ernie. No, he was always involved. Ernie was. I remember he took film of the football games. He went on our Boy Scout trips. He very heavily involved in the incorporation. He was actually against incorporation, and then he ran for city council, and then was very heavily involved in the city government and did a good job. He's very positive about Carpinteria, for sure. He loved our community.
So, any thoughts about the fire district?
Sure, I think we're very fortunate in Carpinteria to have a professional fighting organization. It's Carpinteria Summerlin Fire District. It has the same boundaries as the school district, and so it goes up from Toro Canyon to the mountains, to the ocean, to Rincon. And I was served on the fire board for 17 years, and I can tell you they're a dedicated group of guys who are well trained, who save lives almost every day. They don't fight a lot of fires anymore except during the fire season, and they send crews off to different areas. But they do save lives every day because we have one of the best fire repair medic programs. Those guys are good, and like I said, they're saving somebody's life every day, and we're very fortunate to have them. We have a fire bond going on right now, Measure Z, and I hope it passes. It's a mail-in ballot. We need to make sure that our fire facilities, especially the one in Summerland, are earthquake-proof, provide the correct equipment, protection that is needed, and won't fall down during an earthquake, because when we have an earthquake, we better be able to get our firefighters and their equipment out of the buildings and out to the community to do what's going to be needed to do. I know, again, that our community is pretty smart, and they understand the economics of the situation, and they're going to question, But I think that knowing that you have to have fire and police protection, and you have to have education, you have to have a sound defense to maintain the freedoms that we have and the safety that we have and the style of life that we have, they'll support that Measure Z.
Can you recall any big fires in the last 50 years?
Well, you know, we had the big fires behind us, the Romero fire for sure, and
Was that called the Romero Canyon?
yeah, the Romero Canyon
Let's
fire.
start that over again. So, what fires can you recall in the last?
I can remember the Romero Canyon fire, and what really sticks out in my mind, we were at the football field under practice. We had two of our players. I wasn't the head coach. Mike Warren was the head coach at the time, and they kept looking over their shoulder at the smoke coming out from towards Toro Canyon and Romero Canyon, and so we're kind of losing focus for the practice. And finally, the coach got a little upset, and he said, "What's wrong with you guys?" And they both looked up, and he said, "Coach, we have to go home." He said, "What are you talking about? You have to go home? We think our house is on fire." So they both. Dennis and Les took off, and actually Les's dad was involved with the fire. He was a D8 driver, so he was up there moving dirt and moving brush. So that was a big fire.
About what year was that? Do you know?
It was early 70s. I can't remember, 72, 73.
And did it threaten homes in Carpinteria Valley?
Well, it could have, but it didn't come down this far. No.
I understand that we're at danger now with the dry backcountry.
Oh yeah, well we always have been. You know, anytime we have a drought and we have the hot weather, and yeah, so we have to be extra careful. So I hope those folks that are using the Franklin Trail are being careful and understanding that it doesn't take much to get a spark going, and that we'll do everything possible to stay safe. Structure fires, you know, in 1959, I remember driving the high school at the time where the memorial building is, caught on fire, and that was a big fire structure. Down on Linden Avenue, they had a big fire structure where Omwig's Hardware Store would be, or the True Value Hardware Store, right in that area. That burned.
Well, was that the Melodies?
That's a Melody Club fire, yeah.
Tell me about that.
That was a big fire. I was not living at home. I was living off on 3rd Street, and I got a phone call early in the morning, and my mother called me and said, "You got to get over here. Our house might be catching on fire," because my mother's house was on 8th Street, and the fire was just two houses away from us, right behind the alley from where my mother's house was. So I raced down there, and it was a big fire. It was big flames and fire trucks everywhere, and so Jack Rislin was the fire chief at the time, and he was an old Carpinteria, and I went to Boy Scouts. I was in Boy Scouts with Jack. So that was a big fire, and then of course the Lemon House down by Main School, where Reality Church is, that burned.
Well, about when was that?
Oh my goodness, Larry, I don't know.
Was that before 65?
You know, I can't even recall. Yeah.
Back to the Melody Club. Well, what was the Melody Club?
It was just a bar, you know, a small little local bar. Yeah.
And do you know what started the fire?
You know, I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember what happened there. Okay. Yeah.
So Lou, good interview.
Thank you.
You've done great things for the community.
Thank you.
Thank you from the community. And any last thoughts of what it's been like living here in Carpinteria the last 15 or more years?
Yeah, it's been great. I've loved every part of my life here, from being a young person growing up to being an adult working in the communities, in the schools, and then my retirement's been great. So I think the best thing I can say is that we're in a unique place. We have a lot of positive people who do a lot of good things for our schools, our community, and our natural resources. And I hope that people will sit back and really count their blessings, you know, and celebrate the fact that they live in Carpinteria, and celebrate that every day.
Okay, thanks, Lou. Oh, can we see the piece of the goalpost?
Sure. We'll go out in the garage.
Go ahead, Lou.
Larry, there's a piece of the 1975 goalpost from the CIF championship game, and I'm sure there's pieces like that throughout Carpinteria.
Good job.
Thank you.